Rising cost of living, Canadian dollars simply aren't going as far as they once did, which makes it all the more critical for Canadians to be mindful of their spending habits. So in this video, let's take a look at 5 money habits that might be keeping you poor. Number 1, living beyond your means. The main thing keeping you poor might be not having a monthly budget. Maybe you think it's totally fine and feel budgeting is something no one else really does either. Well, let me tell you, it's simply not true. Studies have constantly shown that without a budget, people tend to spend much more impulsively, which can lead to overspending and financial difficulties. Rather than spending money intentionally based on a budget, oftentimes people tend to make purchases out of convenience or a habit with absolute no regard towards how it's affecting their finances. While there's nothing wrong with getting a latte on your way to work every single day, it's important that you account for it in your budget so that you have a clear picture of how much you're spending on certain items in a month. Similarly, you may be using your credit card more often than you actually need to get points or cashback rewards without realizing that you're the one losing hard-earned pounds only to get pennies in return. With attractive plans such as buy now, pay later, it's easier to get carried away and purchase items you didn't even need in the first place. Let me tell you something. If you still have a credit card debt or not have an emergency fund in place, only plan that you should be on is trying to save 3 to 6 months of your expenses in an emergency fund. Now, don't get me wrong, building credit is important, but it's also important to be mindful of your spending habits. Speaking of credit, watch this video where I talk about 5 easy steps that you can take to improve your credit score today. Overpaying for everyday items such as groceries or clothing can also take a significant bite out of your budget and quickly add up over time. Try to have a list of what you're going to buy beforehand to keep the spending under control and avoid any impulse purchases. If you're not constantly trying to find ways to reduce your expenses, it's going to add up and eventually cost you a lot. Hence, it's important to leverage apps like Checkout 51 or Save.ca, which oftentimes have deals on everyday items such as groceries and offer you cashbacks for uploading your receipts. But at the same time, it's important to not buy anything just because you're getting cashback rewards for it. If you would like to learn more about various ways to earn cashbacks and how you can use points to save money, you can check out these Instagram accounts. They share weekly deals on groceries and everyday essentials, and you can leverage it to get stuff on discounts if you're in Canada. I will also be adding their links in the description so that you can take a look. Now, while you're doing this, it's also important to remember that it doesn't make sense to micromanage your expenses if you end up spending a lot on big purchases like buying a car or an expensive phone. So always try to be cognizant of buying expensive items that you don't really need and calculate how that item aligns with your budget. Just because you can buy something doesn't mean you can actually afford it. Let me say it one more time for the people in the back. Just because you can buy something does not mean that you can afford it. Number 2, fear of taking risks. What we have always known is always comfortable, which is why it's not surprising why many of us dread change. As they say, oftentimes the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. A lot of people start living life of complacency when their bills are being paid and maybe they're able to save a little bit on the side and overall their life is comfortable. However, this can actually trap them into living a passive life and not work hard towards chasing bigger goals and earning more income. I recently learned about something really interesting in the Modern Wisdom podcast called the Region Beta Paradox. It roughly means people oftentimes recover quicker from far worse situations than from bad situations in their lives, as the more intense states trigger certain psychological processes in a more intense manner. So if your bills are being paid and you don't have an immediate threat, you're more likely to be complacent as opposed to, let's say, if you were fired and you were forced to find a better paying job. When things are good, try to work even more harder and strive to achieve more success to account for anything unexpected that might happen in the future. Just because you make enough, don't let it stop you from shopping around for better paying jobs or asking for a raise as and when you can. Maybe also try learning a new skill and try to convert it into a side hustle. One very important skill that I have learned in the past year is to just smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm so that this video can be pushed to a lot more people. On a serious note, I will be sharing a video pretty soon on actionable side hustles that you can do this year to make more money, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel. One of my all-time favorite books is As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. In this book, he talks about how a man's thoughts shape his reality. He makes a claim that you are a sum of everything that you think about. Whether you think you're capable to do something or not are both actually true. So try to have an unwavering belief in yourself and approach anything that you do with a positive mindset. Of course, be rational and fix your mistakes as you go along, but don't ever doubt that you cannot do something. So if you have been planning to start a side hustle for some time now, let me know in the comments what it is. And I challenge to go all in for 6 months and comment again after 6 months to let me know how it went. You have to make a promise though, that once you start, you will not stop for at least 6 months. You will not quit until you have spent 6 months to consistently work on it. Number 3, lack of financial awareness. Personal finance is something not a lot of people pay attention to because it seems as if it doesn't have any tangible effects in our lives, when it actually really defines the way we navigate ourselves between our present and future. When I first moved to Canada, I quickly observed the way things worked here were way more different. So I spent a lot of time borrowing different personal finance books from the library and learning more about how banking and investment systems work here. And I'm here to tell you that it's probably the single best thing you can do. So if you don't know the difference between a checkings and a savings account, or how different credit cards work, I highly encourage you to read a few personal finance books and try to become more aware of personal finance as a subject. With so many predatory tactics that credit card and payday loan companies use to entice people into racking on more debt, if you're not careful, you can easily get sucked into a debt trap. Becoming more financially aware and learning how money works will save you from making any blunders and achieve financial success in the long run. Once you have gained a basic understanding of personal finance as a subject, start asking yourself questions like, how much do you make? How much money would you need for retirement? How much money you would need for any short-term or long-term goals such as wedding, vacations? As entertaining these questions and thinking about them will motivate you to act more responsibly with your finances and make better financial decisions in the long run. Number 4, lifestyle inflation. Lifestyle inflation occurs when people start spending more as soon as their income increases. This generally happens when, let's say, a student graduates and starts working a full-time job, or when somebody gets a promotion. The bigger paycheck allows people to spend a lot more money and they forget they can actually save or invest their money for their future goals. Unfortunately, our society promotes judging someone's social status based on the possessions they own. So when someone receives a pay raise, they are more often inclined to buy more material things, such as a higher-end car or buying a better phone, rather than turning inwardly to look for happiness. If you know this beforehand and manage to keep your expenses the same despite getting a pay raise, I promise you it will put you ahead of most people. So if you can take 1 point home from this video, let this point be it. Say you're making $60,000 in a year and suddenly you get a pay raise or you find a better job and you start making $80,000. Strive to not increase your expenses and try and invest or save the extra $15,000 or $20,000. Of course, it's tempting to spend money when you get a raise because you feel like you deserve it. But if you don't keep your expenses in check, you might end up in a worse situation than where you initially were. As once people increase their spending habits, it's very difficult to cut back. If it helps, try to look at the price of anything you want to buy in terms of the hours that you have worked to earn that money instead of how much it costs. Number 5, not planning ahead. Just like with everything in life, it's important to have an end in mind with every financial decision that you make. Not having a long-term financial plan might make you make mistakes that might be trickier to fix later on in life. For example, if you're not saving enough for emergencies or rainy days, just because you think it might not happen to you, you might be off to playing a risky bet. It always seems like it might not happen to someone until it actually does. So it's absolutely important to account for that and have enough savings on the side. Similarly, it's important to account for any short-term or long-term goals that you may have, such as your children's education, wedding, or retirement. Unless you account for these things, anything unexpected that happens to you will feel like an accident, even though you could have easily avoided it by accounting for it beforehand. Even unexpected expenses such as house repair or medical bills can actually have a drastic impact on your expenses if you don't account for these beforehand. So it's important to have a long-term game plan for your finances. By avoiding these money habits, I promise you will be able to get closer to financial freedom and just sleep a little bit better and a little less stressed. Remember, breaking poor financial habits and achieving financial security is a process that takes time and effort. So stay consistent on your journey and don't let small unexpected setbacks stop you from getting rid of these habits altogether. End of the day, if you change nothing, nothing will change. So do the best with what you know and have and make improvements as you go along. If you're still living paycheck to paycheck and don't know where to start, watch this video where I share 5 easy steps that you can take to break out of it.